From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. We're going to touch on all of those today. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
And as always, the most important thing in the entire world is to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We are continuing to recommend The Living Force by Jonathan Jackson Miller because Ken is still enjoying reading it, but I don't think it's quite finished. This was a great one that I was able to get into, basically because I had a couple of plane rides right when the book came out, and I read it on planes, and it was great. If you would like to read this charming and heartfelt story about the Jedi trying to reconnect to their roots around the Phantom Menace era, you can check it out on us. You can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. It helps us out a lot. And hey, it's free. We normally do our asks section, and this is kind of an ask. We've been promoting Patreon a lot, but we want to ask everybody who is listening or watching who doesn't already support Star Wars Explained, the YouTube channel and podcast, Alex and Molly Damon. We would love to ask you to support them. Ken, you've got a little bit of a background on this, right?
Yeah, it's been another tough week in the Star Wars fandom, but this goes beyond Star Wars. This goes into culture war. The culture war has long invaded spaces. There's, Joseph, you were talking offline. Gamergate never ended, all those kind of things. We see a lot of this going on right now. And the dumpster fire that is Star Wars social media exploded this week. And in the middle of that was two wonderful people, Alex and Molly Damon. And we don't want to get into the details of that because I just fear there's nothing that can be done with, what's going on out there in terms of the folks who have the high ground of money, success, and clicks and views. And those things are definitely permanent and never go away, especially when you're morally bankrupt. But we love Alex and Molly Damon, have for years, and we are always there to throw our support behind them, but to do it in ways that would that actually help, and that is supporting their channel, subscribing if you have it. There's the Venn diagram of ForceCenter fans and Star Wars Explained fans is, at this point, just a big, wonderful, warm party where everyone's laughing and enjoying things. But if you're listening and you haven't had a chance to swing on over, subscribe to their channel on YouTube, follow them, all the things they do. They have some other shows as well. To say they're two wonderful people, it doesn't even take the truth of who they are into account. Absolutely love them. I've known them for years. They've been so warm and supportive of us, and we try to extend that back to them as well. So, it is about protecting what we love, not always fighting what we hate, and we absolutely love Alex and Molly at Star Wars Explained. So give them a follow if you haven't already, or just go check out their videos if you have already.
Yeah. A little more, just a little more context from my perspective. People can go look up on social media the various flare-ups that have been going on. We've been talking a lot in the last several weeks about trying to make an effort to distinguish between a good faith Star Wars opinion of this show didn't work for you, this character didn't work for you, and how sadly those good faith truths of sometimes you don't like a thing in Star Wars are often co-opted by people who aren't really talking about Star Wars. They have bad faith reasons for those opinions, and they hide behind the good faith people like cowards. And this flare up that's been going on does have to do with that. We also wanted to be sure to say that there's been a lot going on Twitter, and ForceCenter has been quiet because we're just trying not to use Twitter much. We've been using it really, for the most part, only for promotion. And in the next few weeks, just due to the changes in Twitter, for example, it not being called Twitter anymore, we're going to be trying to just move off of X and focus on Threads and Blue Sky and Instagram and places like that. So part of the reason that we haven't been vocal about absolutely anything except for promoting our own episodes is because we're just ready to be done with that particular social media site. But I also wanted to just swing back to the positive in that Alex and Molly are not just wonderful broadcasters, wonderful fans. They are just wonderful people. And I usually these days, I'm I'm busy at lunch, so I just need something kind of short and literally sweet to watch. And I watch Alex and Molly almost every day, not only for the insight, but just for the charm. And for, like Ken said, it's a Venn diagram, overlaps Star Wars Explained in ForceCenter. So for the three of you who might listen or watch us that don't listen or watch Alex and Molly, we overlap in so many ways, but I think more than anything, it's just the desire to be thoughtful and fun and human about talking about Star Wars, and say that Star Wars means a lot to us and it can mean lots of different things, but it's also just something fun and human. And I think they bring that out so well. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts or anything that you'd like to share?
I just think that they're such good people, and on top of being great people, they know a lot. And in spite of knowing a lot as fans, which can sometimes feel intimidating, especially if you're just entering this space as a new fan, have always the way that they talk about Star Wars is celebrating the knowledge and come on in to our nerd bubble, as we say, and never like, it just feels like such a respectful and welcoming community that they have created. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful that, like our rebel heroes, they are standing up for what is right. And they are being allies. And sometimes for me, like as a woman of color, it can feel like I can't really say anything because I'm just automatically a target. So it's really noble, and more people should be doing this to go up against other white people. Sorry, because sometimes white people don't want to hear it from a person of color, So, and I don't want to get us further into the weeds and set some more fires here, but I just want to say that I'm so grateful for them as people, as well as the causes that they are championing, and the support that they're showing all fans, because all fans are welcome in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Yeah, no, we'll stop there because we could do hours on this, because it's well beyond Star Wars, and it always has been well beyond Star Wars. That's something we've all experienced personally. I told the story of in 2017, 2018, my friend hating Last Jedi, and then finally telling me in the gym, but why do I have to see an Asian woman and a black man kiss? And that's when I was like, oh, we're not talking about Star Wars anymore.
Yeah.
Got it. And that's a lot of what's going on, and it makes a lot of money. Guess what? It's not just Star Wars. I deal with it every week in comedy clubs. We've been all around this a lot. Jen, you've probably dealt with it a little bit more in your life than I have. So we always support you as well as best we can. And anyways, yeah. I want to go fight someone, Joseph. Let's go fight. You want to go fight? You want to fight? You want to fight?
We almost we're verging on. I think we almost always have really good pattern. We keep anything from being a blank spot, and it's almost like the three of us need like 30 seconds of silence to stop ourselves from saying any more. Contain. Be positive, support Alex and Molly, and move on. That's what we're doing today, and maybe we'll get more into the weeds later, but it just doesn't feel productive at the moment to get more into the weeds. So we're going to move on to our main topic, if you are both okay with that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm great. I'm good with it.
Okay, so we're going to dive into just the mountain of news. I'm joking. There wasn't much news about Star Wars this week. Last night, I believe the costumes of Ahsoka won an Emmy. Wonderful. Lovely. Great. Outside of that, the main news that I could find is about the video game Star Wars Outlaws having a rocky reception ? So we're going to talk about that for a minute, and then kind of jumping off from that, do a little bit of a deep dive on how Star Wars fandom fits into our lives and how that changes over time, and how I think that's kind of okay for it to evolve and mean different things to you at different times of your life. But first up, let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws. So it's got mixed to average scores from the critics. The company's stock allegedly dipped in response to it not doing as great as people expected. The creators gave an interview to acknowledge that some of the early stealth missions were too difficult and say they were going to tweak them. They also announced upcoming story packs featuring Lando Calrissian and Hondo Ohnaka. So there's a lot of kind of ups and downs and mea culpas, but also I wanted to throw in there that my own totally anecdotal evidence scrolling through threads in Blue Sky, there's a lot of positivity, a lot of fan artwork of KVS and Nyx. A lot of people saying, yeah, that mechanic was a little bit clunky, but man, I love playing Sabacc, or this is my childhood fantasy come true. I'm just wandering around Star Wars. So I'm seeing a lot of positivity anecdotally on social media. But this seems like a good place to start a conversation about fandom evolving. So, Ken, you are probably the most active gamer of the three of us these days. Are you playing the game? And if so, why or why not?
Look, I got 3 wins as Lady Gaga on Fortnite last night, Joseph. I don't have time for anything else right now. No, I am
what outfit? What outfit?
It's a Chromatica ball outfit. Chromatica ball.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And I know just sometimes there's some gamer bros being defeated by a 5'2" pop star in the game, and I just love it. I have not played the game yet. That's a big yet. I'm going to be playing the game because it's got everything that I want. I'm a big open world guy. When I say that just means I love Red Dead Redemption 2. If you follow me enough or see one of my stand-up shows, you know that's true. But there's something to be said about the price point being an issue. The basic, all games are more expensive. Life's more expensive. I have to go see a movie tonight for work-related reasons, and I paid that ticket, and I immediately became 80. I was like, this is too much. Too much, and I haven't got myself a food yet. So the cost is an issue for me in terms of just like, I'm going to wait till I can truly comfortably afford it. And then I saw some of the stuff about the gameplay, and I was like, I'm just going to wait because I think they are going to correct it. Our listener, our friend 8984M in our Discord said, man, the amount of times he fall off that speeder. And I was like, I need to wait. I need to wait till they fix the speeder. If they will at all. But I'm excited to play it. We'll get into some of the details, but I'm excited to play it for some of the things you're talking about, Joseph. Not story. I've seen some story things that seem cool. Not the action. But people are like, I went and played Sabacc for hours. I'm like, that's what I've been waiting for in Star Wars. I just want to go experience that.
Yeah. I am not playing it right now, largely because of the Sabacc, because I would like it too much and it would derail my life. The only reason that I'm not playing it is time, and I haven't upgraded to a PS5 yet. And I've said this many times, I get really sucked into video games, and it would be really hard. So I want to support the game. I'm excited about it. I love the number of people I see talking about, like, hey, I love the Jedi in the Force, but man, it's fun to just be a scoundrel with a blaster. So I would love to play it, and I would love to enjoy that open world vibe of just seeing weird corners of the galaxy and playing Sabacc. And maybe I will around December if I can get the stuff I'm working on done. Maybe I will, and then I can have time to play Sabacc. Jennifer, where are you at with this game?
I like that it exists. My first question was, is this available on Switch? Because that's really the only gaming system I play. Animal Crossing. If it was Star Wars Animal Crossing, you'd have my money. I only have a PS4, so I don't know if it's available on that. I don't have the time. But I love what I'm seeing on our Discord. And that's really what kind of changed my opinion on it, was people were just loving hanging out in Star Wars world. And it's an open world. There's a lot to do. I love Red Dead Redemption, Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. That's why I love those games, is because I don't have to have a mission, defeat the big boss, blah, blah, blah. I can just live in this fantasy world. And that's another thing people on our Discord were saying, was how immersive it feels. So I just think it sounds fun. And I'm happy for all of you who are playing. I will live vicariously through you.
I love that, the vicarious enjoyment. Yeah, please. I don't know if you can post clips of the video game, but I'm seeing some screenshots, so I will live through that as I scroll through. How do we feel about the scores? I haven't really seen any conversation like this, but I can see the conversation going this way of like the middling scores about this video game are another reflection of a larger trend with Star Wars kind of having a moment of struggle. Do you think it's about larger Star Wars that it's had a mixed reception? Or do you think it's just this game? Is it more about a review of this actual game's play and this actual game's price? Ken, where do you go?
I think it's a good litmus test for some of the stuff we're talking up top about, of good faith versus bad faith. We mentioned it last week. or a couple of episodes ago, Jen, you mentioned, some of the complaints about K-Vest not being attractive enough are not complaints I would take legitimately. One star scores on that is maybe not about Star Wars. But there are some things, like I said, Jen, we've had a robust discussion in our Discord, but some of it is around the gameplay mechanics. Price point, as I said, is definitely a concern that's beyond Star Wars. But I think it's a good, if you go into the weeds and follow, as I've been trying to, is this going to be worth my money? A stealth mode mission being completely difficult is something that I might throw my controller over. So maybe I wait for that, and I think that's legitimate. And at the same time, and we understand Star Wars in the last couple of years has, much like Marvel, faced a little bit of struggles here and there versus the past. Totally understand that. But even then, Fallen Order and Survivor, I think lived outside of that, where people just loved them as games. Star Wars fans did love them, and I think gamers found the game to be fulfilling as well. At least the first one seemed to even hit that more. So I think sometimes games live outside the general conversation, but I definitely could see that factoring in right now too. So I don't know. To me, it's just a case-by-case, review-by-review basis.
Yeah, this seems to be much more about the game and not sort of Star Wars fatigue, because I think this is exactly the kind of game that Star Wars fans and gamers who are Star Wars fans have been clamoring for decades. And that's a repeated thing. I've seen at least 3 or 4 posts on social media from people being like, I was 12 in 1977, or I am an original trilogy kid, and I've been waiting for this for years. So I don't think there's any sort of like lack of enthusiasm for Star Wars. If there's some sales issues, that might be about money. But everything in terms of the reviews does seem like pretty straightforward to be about the gameplay, especially with the creators coming out and going, yeah, we might have made the early stealth missions a little too hard. And for me, I'm totally with you, Ken. There's this tension in video games between, I think, making it sort of narratively accurate and making it like fun. Like the creators were talking about, like, well, she doesn't have a relationship with these, crime lords yet, and she's got to sneak into their base. It really felt like it should be a stealth. And like, yeah, narratively, that makes a lot of sense. And for myself as a gamer, stealth is the last damn thing I want to do on the face of the earth. I feel like I spend every second of my life being careful about something. And when I play a video game, I want to run around screaming and blowing things up.
Yes.
Crouching and knocking over a cup because I hit the X button 2 seconds too late is, for me personally, the last bleeping thing on the face of the earth that I personally want in a video game. So I feel for the creators where we're trying to tell the story and we're trying to make it engaging, and she should be sneaky. But I also get anybody who's like, yeah, I'm kind of not in a stealth mood.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And Jen, I don't know if there's any sneaking for those bells in Animal Crossing, but like Red Dead's an example. Anytime they're like, sneak into the Moonshiner's base, they're like, nah, I'm just going to walk in with guns blazing and we'll see what happens.
Exactly. That's the approach I take as well. Well, this could be it, but I'll come back. I'll respawn. So yeah, I can't. That's why I can't play this game, because I don't have the bandwidth for the learning curve that it will take me to get to where I need to be able to enjoy the game. Yeah. I think in terms of like, does this reflect a larger trend with Star Wars games? If you look at the reviews versus the discussion online, it's kind of different. So initially when I was looking at the discussion, I did see those things, as you mentioned, Ken, where it was like, this chick isn't hot enough. And I think that there is a portion of fans and gamers who, and it's also the timing, it came out right after Acolyte ended. So certain people are already kind of ramped up and they're like, you're going to make us play as a female, right? So you have those people.
Sorry. But it's so ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous, but they exist. All right. But I think that if you look at the reviews, and that's what I started doing on IGN, I was like, it's like 7 out of 10. Sounds like they had some fair criticism. Like you said, in our Discord, there were some things, and it's a high price point. So, it seems pretty fair to me. I also do think, though, that Star Wars games, and perhaps Marvel as well, have a higher bar that they have to meet than the average video game. I do kind of feel like Star Wars has a target on its back when doing any sort of video game, especially because there is, fandom that operates in very negative spaces around Star Wars. So anyways, Yeah, the actual reviews seem fair to me.
Yeah.
But the discussion is another thing.
Yeah. I mean, in particular, like there was an era in the video game business where it was good business to rush a game out and put a brand name on it. And I think gamers are still, long after that trend has ended, still poised to think, are you trying to slap Star Wars or Marvel on it and rush a game out? It's why we don't see video games based on movies anymore, because the timeline doesn't work, because the games have to be good. Because people got burned. I got burned by a couple of video games back in the day. It's like, it says Star Wars. Wait, this is not very good.
I've been there.
So moving along, how do we feel about the creators, apologizing and adjusting as they go? I totally understand that is standard for video games. It's the way the video game industry is built, with updates and downloads and DLC and that. It's totally standard for video games, but in my opinion, that's a dangerous model for art, and certainly for movies and TV shows, to have people go like, I didn't like that. Can you update it? I didn't like that plot point in The Mandalorian. Could you patch that? Which I know nobody is saying right now, but it's where my mind goes to when I see creators going, sorry, we messed up. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about that. They're different art forms and different rules. That's fine with me, but Jennifer, do you have any sort of reaction to that difference in video games and other forms of narrative that the creators are acknowledging, apologizing, and having a patch?
I think it is complicated, because this is where you get the fans that feel entitled. They feel like they are paying customers. We're paying for Disney Plus. We're paying for a movie ticket. Therefore, you owe it to me to tell the story that I want you to tell. I think with video games, it's a little bit different, because it feels, even though it is art and storytelling, it's kind of like a service, right? And so if I'm having trouble and everyone else is like, yeah, this mission is really freaking hard, and the creators are like, we hear you, we're going to adjust that. It's like tweaking. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit more mechanical. It feels more fair, especially when you're shelling out a lot of money and they want you to be upgrading, right? Like buying different packs and things like that. It's a little bit different. So I actually appreciate it, as opposed to when they just like expect you to shell out this money. It's like, I just bought this game and now you want me to pay another amount of money to upgrade? Like, that doesn't seem very fair, and nobody responds to that. So I think the dialogue is good, but you're right, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Mechanical is such a great way to say it, because I think what I was wrestling with of like, video games aren't entirely different. They're narrative, they're an art, but these kind of tweaks aren't the narrative. They aren't like, we heard you and the character's not K-Vess anymore,
Right.
Or we're going to change how the story ends necessarily on this game. It is like, well, if she falls off the speeder more than she is meant to, that's almost like if, like then when they've removed, a coffee cup, or if they put out an episode of Kenobi season 2, which isn't going to happen, and one line of dialogue was the incorrect volume, and they patched that mechanical problem, but didn't, change the actual narrative, the art. And I think that distinction is what's super important to me. Ken, do you have thoughts or feelings on this?
What's the story for, in Chris Taylor's book, that the week of release of New Hope, after Lucas got back from Hawaii, he was in the sound room fixing some sound issues like days after it was released. Like, but I'm with both of you. I think you're threading the needle just fine. I'm with you too, Joseph. I get really protective of art. The Sonic thing from a few years ago. Remember that campaign to change the design of that, and I could get it, but it's like, it's a dangerous precedent. It also reminds me, especially the other job I used to work years ago, of the I pay your salary people are usually never saying that in good faith. There's usually I always leave room for 10% if maybe it works, but the people who I pay your salary, trust me, not the people you want to hang out with. So it kind of reminds me of that kind of stuff. But Jen, to your point, I'm with you. This is mechanical. This is, video games have the ability to correct. And Joseph, you're right too. If it was like, all right, upon further review, K-Vess is gone, and now here's a guy. That would be a problem to me. That's not what's happening here. But they have the game. Look, right? I mean, I talk about Fortnite all the time. Every time they introduce like some new super weapon and it wins the game in 5 shots, there's always a patch that corrects it when they're like, oops, sorry, we went too far. So I think that's par for the course, and I think it's okay for them to come out and say, hey, we understand some of these things aren't working mechanically. So, but it is a slippery slope.
Yeah. I
Definitely.
mean, I just feel strongly that, that customer is always right, element comes into it. And I feel like people say like, well, the customer needs a voice. And like, you do have a voice. It's your money and it's your opinion online. And there's lots of ways for you to
Yeah.
voice your opinion. I just feel like with art that it should be, here's the statement the creator makes, then you respond in all these various tools you have, not buying it, criticizing it, all that kind of thing. In that it should mostly be left there. I understand the mechanical fixes, but I'm also kind of fascinated with those of like, to me, it's entirely about creator intention. Like the creators go like, we want that stealth level to be fun. And we understand we tweaked it so it's more challenging than fun. So we will make sure that our intent that was there all along is executed correctly. I think once you start trying to kind of get into that, like invite the whole world into the kitchen to help cook the meal. Like I remember when I was really obsessed with Star Wars Battlefront 2 and played it a lot in 2018 and 2019, particularly the heroes versus villains. I got myself some great distracting time finding various forums where people would argue about, is Kylo Ren too powerful, or is he nerfed, or is he too weak? And like 1 week, the Kylo Ren is too strong, people would win, and then the other people would be furious. And you'd turn the game on again and again, and characters would just their abilities and their powers would wildly change. And I thought that was kind of a great demonstration of why at some point you got to stop tweaking, because you're never going to please everyone.
There's that balance we all know as performers, right? Especially in the stand-up world. I'm judged with every bit. The audience will tell me if it works or not. I have to decide, was it something I did? Was it them? Do I want to change it? Do I want to stick to my guns? Am I sticking to my message? Or am I going to run headfirst into a brick wall? And that is part of art. But yeah, if someone stood up in the audience and was like, don't do that joke anymore, I don't like it, I wouldn't want to capitulate to that. I know who I am as an artist, so it's hard. It's a hard world.
Yeah.
Sometimes navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Any other thoughts on the general reception to Star Wars Outlaws before we take a quick break?
I'm happy to see a lot of positivity around it, especially on the little details that we've said. I've seen some of the clips, story points, so I'll get to that when I get to that. But I have always wanted this kind of thing too. That's what I do like about how many times I've talked about, even on Battlefront, where I'm like, oh, I just wandered Jabba's palace. Do you know he has a bathtub? Like, I think that stuff's part of the fun, the minutia that we love as Star Wars fans.
Yeah. There's this great artist on Instagram. I'll have to find her, but she started making a Nyx little creature. It looks so lifelike just from the game. It's incredible. I'll have to find it, and I forget her name. She dressed up like one of the prequel things. Anyways, come back to me later.
A battle droid? She dressed up as a battle droid.
No, she dressed up as it's not the Nexu. Maybe it is
the
Nexu.
Reek? The Acklay?
No, it might be the Nexu. Anyways, I'll find
Okay.
it and share later after the break.
Okay, that sounds very good. Yeah, I'm with you both. This game, I'm sorry to see that it's maybe having a little bit of a rocky beginning, but we know that video games have a long tail these days, and that does not mean that it's its fate. And more than anything, it looks like such a joyful game. And the comments that are positive that I see on social media are the exact kind of positive Star Wars engagement that kind of warms my heart and gets me excited and wants me to be involved, to see people doing art of it and talking about how fun it is to get Nyx to attack people, and people going like, I just played Sabacc for hours, and that's great, and I wish that I could experience it now, and I look forward to experiencing it down the road. With that, we're going to take a quick break and Google people dressing up as the Nexu. Back in a moment. And we are back to discuss a little bit more about how our Star Wars fandom evolves over time. But I also realized, Ken, we switched up our intro a little bit, and we buzzed past life adventures. Was there a life adventure you had this week that you really wanted to share?
Surviving record-breaking heat and feeling like I was Finn on Jakku, trying to find a city or water or Hapabor butt in front of me. It was something, and I don't know. Continuing to set heat records seems problematic. Seems like something we should look into. It was the hottest day in the history of Burbank on Thursday, and it was hard to enjoy anything, Joseph. It was hard to enjoy. I would have loved to have been on Camino. I thought about Camino a lot over the last couple of
Yeah.
days.
Oh, the rain on Camino. It would be so nice. Yeah, it's not where you live is always like 5 to 10 degrees hotter than where I live, and where I lived has
Mhm.
been 105 for like 3 or 4 days straight.
Yeah.
It's never been quite this bad. We're on an upper floor too, so then the heat comes up in the evening, and
Mhm.
at this point, our bed is retaining heat. Like
Yeah.
the rest of the apartment is
Yes.
starting to cool down, and you put your hand
Yes.
on the bed, and it's warm. Like Goldilocks has been trying it out or some damn thing.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
why is the bed warm? It's
What's the deal? Can we just stand up on that? So my fiance is gone. She's out of state right now. She's working, and so where she is, it's like 77 degrees right now. God bless her. Me and the Chihuahua, Frances wouldn't get on the bed. She was like, "No, that is hot. That is lava."
The dogs, yes, exactly.
The
My
dog-
dog, yeah, did not. She just like flopped on the floor. She did not want to go in her crate. She was like, "I am going to
Yep.
be by the air conditioning because there's no air
Yep.
conditioning in our kitchen."
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jennifer, how are you surviving the heat, and any other life adventures that you want to share this week?
I was going to talk about my physics class in Star Wars, but instead I'm going to share. Her name is, she's a cosplayer, a creator, maker, an artist. Her name is Marietta Ivanova. She dressed up as a Geonosian. She dressed up as a Nexu. Her
Ooh.
costumes are absolutely incredible. And she created, or she worked with some people to create a 3D model of Nyx. And she is working on this right now. You can go to her Instagram. It is amazing. I got to show a picture for those of you on.
Ooh.
Look at that. Doesn't that look so
Yeah.
real? And the idea is that you'll be able to, they shared like the files. If you have a 3D printer and this talent, you can create one to sit on your shoulder at the next Star Wars celebration. So cosplayers, if you have a 3D printer, this possibility is real.
That is a complex print from the tiny bit of 3D printing that our friend Ken Plume helped me do for the Nightmare Adorable short. That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
very amazing.
Yeah, I don't have
Any
those
other-
skills.
Yeah, no. Me dressing up like a Nexu would be like a cat mask and a T-shirt that says "I'm a Nexu." That's what I could do cosplay wise. Ken, any other life or Star Wars adventures you wanted to share before we dive back in?
No, absolutely ready to dive on in.
Excellent. So we always know that talking about the video games is going to be reflective of the fact that our relationship with Star Wars is always evolving, and it got me thinking about how that's not really, to me, a bad thing, because there's lots of different ways to engage with Star Wars. So it made me think this would be a fun conversation. So I want to start by talking about video games. Jennifer, in periods of your life where you did actively play Star Wars video games, what did they provide? Was it escapism, a deeper appreciation of the galaxy, community? What did you get out of playing Star Wars video games?
I played Shadows of the Empire on the Nintendo 64 back in college, and it was hours and hours of entertainment, of fun, of reliving my Star Wars childhood nostalgia, and it was awesome. It was great. Yeah, and I don't know why I've never really gotten back into it. I think it's because I did take such a large break in my gaming life that really my speed is Animal Crossing because it's pretty intuitive. Any sort of complex button mashing, I can't do my Street Fighter moves. It's like, oh shoot, the stealth mission sounds terrifying. I would absolutely fail. So yeah, Star Wars games have been escapism.
Yeah. So when you were playing in college, would you play with friends or roommates, or was that pretty much more like a late night and study's done and it's time to fight IG-88? Or
no, I think I had a boyfriend at the time, and he was into Star Wars too, and so we just would play for hours. I still did very well in school, so it's all right.
Yeah.
The important questions answered. Ken,
Yeah.
how much did Star Wars video games drive you to drop out of school?
I'll tell you what it did. It kept me. it kept me from continuing school. I started my radio career early, as I've said before, like I was 18. And I did I was 2 years of junior college. I should have gone on because my radio job ended at 10 a.m. I had the morning show. So I'd be home by 10:05. I lived in a small town. And that would have been the perfect time to advance my career in other areas. Now, I just play TIE Fighter on my dad's computer all day for 8 hours. Or I go play tennis. I was the tennis guy for a long time, which is a weird thing to say out loud, I guess. And it's an extension of the playground. It's an extension of the backyard. You mentioned, I think last week too, on our episodes, Jed, like playing like in a tree and using that tree as a Star Wars vehicle. We had in my yard growing up, we had a palm tree, couple palm trees that were like like just horizontal almost. They'd grown weird, and those are speeder bikes to me. And I would get on and just act out speeder bike scenes. And so when video games advanced to the point where you felt like TIE Fighter, I felt like I was in the Imperial Navy flying around. I had a mission to guard Palpatine. Oh, I'm in Star Wars. It was an extension of the playground fantasies. It was why we defend the idea of, they're just playing with their action figures. It can be an insult. We defend the idea that playing with the action figures is about what it's all about. It's inspiration. It's storytelling. And video games, even when it was on rails, Shadows of the Empire, famous for its Hoth battle scene, because I finally felt I was in it. Finally felt I had the frustration of tow cables. And that's why I started and loved playing just all video games. I felt like I was James Bond for a while in 1996. But Star Wars games definitely have that power.
Yeah, no, I think one of the Star Wars games that I played the most was I rented for the NES because I hadn't played games in a while, and the Star Wars game had come out, like the 8-bit one, where Luke's like a bobblehead. Looking back, it looks like you're playing a Funko Pop game. Even then, like, these graphics aren't cool, but I feel so cool, and I kept renewing that until I think they're like, you've paid enough that you owe that you could just have bought this.
Yeah,
because you keep renting it.
Just buy it.
Because that was in the sort of the time when there wasn't a lot of Star Wars going on. Just the Thrawn books had come out, and
right.
For me, the extension of the playground. But for me, it was also that return to a world that I hadn't been a part of. That was sort of fading in memory a little bit, and it was the escapism. It was the fun, but it was also just kind of remembering, even in hearing in like tinny 8-bit. The Force theme and being moved by it. So for me, I think it's video games have been an escape from the real world, but also a deeper connection to the world of Star Wars, which, Ken, you've talked a lot about over the years of playing Revenge of the Sith and being moved by Padme's ruminations. And I think we all have examples where playing in the world of Star Wars maybe made us like something more or notice some detail from the films. Jennifer, did you have any moments like that with Shadows of the Empire where it made you appreciate something in Star Wars differently because you got to spend so much time in the world of it?
No, just what Ken said, which was it was really freaking frustrating to try and get that tow cable around the AT-AT. But that was about it. It just really, at that time, that felt very sophisticated, that gameplay. If that felt immersive to me, which is kind of laughable. It still is a great game, but boy, I mean, you look at these video games now, I'm like, you guys, I tell my kids, you guys have no idea how lucky you have it. You kids. And they're complaining, there's nothing to do. I'm like, oh my gosh. Although they do love Roblox, which is very 8-bit and very kind of silly.
Yeah, it all advanced so quickly. Yeah, I mean, I think all through the years of playing them, they've made me appreciate the little corners that I already love more, or maybe a corner that I wasn't as into. I loved the Rogue Squadron games for N64 and for the GameCube, and it made me pay attention to, like, hey, all of these tanks I'm blowing up outside of Bespin, are they actually in the movie? Like, I freeze framing the movie and all that stuff. That even up to Battlefront 2 and the Ewok hunt. Everybody, for years has had fun making our murder bear jokes and having our fun saying, like, yeah, they seem cute and they sold a lot of teddy bears, but they're murdering and eating stormtroopers. Like, it was really fun to actually play that and to be like I'm the Ewok. I am the monster stalking the darkness.
So good.
It was so fun to play that, to be that,
It's one of the all-time best modes in any Star Wars video game. Dare I say video games in general. That horn, that Ewok horn we've all been familiar with since 1983, being an absolute moment from a horror film. Burn, 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 burn. You're like, I'm dead. I'm dead. This little thing's gonna eat me. Oh God, it's the best. It's
You
the
hear that
best.
horn in that mode. If you're playing the Stormtrooper, you hear that horn go off. It's like you're hearing Michael Myers' theme from Halloween. Like,
It
I'm dead.
really is.
I'm dead. It's over. Yeah.
It's all so good.
Uh,
So
so
good.
moving along from video games to kind of larger Star Wars, Ken, when you were a kid, how did Star Wars originally fit into your life? Like, what did you get out of it? You mean like the day with the toys and all that, but on a
Mhm.
deeper emotional level, like, what do you think it was providing you that you needed as a child?
I definitely think it was a sense of adventure and imagination and all these heroes' journey things that we can, I definitely wasn't thinking at 7 or 8, but it definitely pulled me in. I didn't go to other things as much. I did enjoy Star Trek. It's not a happy belated Star Trek Day to those that celebrated. I watched Star Trek 4 and I loved it. I loved Star Trek 6, a great movie. I love it. But something about Star Wars pulled me in, and that's it. You just are who you are, and I can put all these deeper meanings on it now, but I think for me it was a sense of adventure. It was playing on the tree and going, "This is a speeder bike," and chasing something more. And then quickly it became a North Star for things I wanted to do in my life. I did not end up being a writer director, but what I always tell the story of learning that not only was there this guy George Lucas that did it, but getting that magazine in 1983 that had pictures of Phil Tippett and John Dykstra, even going back to A New Hope, but Dennis Muir and all those folks, the light and magic folks, man, the industrial light and magic people. That was like, oh, and I didn't have those skills. I didn't even have the desire to build models. I I didn't have my dad's engineering hands. I learned that early on. I needed the snap together novel models, not the glue ones. But it just was like, oh, people did this. Got it. I want to do this. I want to figure something out. And it went in different ways for me. But that's also what Star Wars meant to me a lot early on.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Jennifer, what do you think you got from Star Wars as a kid? What did it provide?
I've talked about the imaginative play, but Kenny reminded me of when I was a little bit older as a young teen, and I really appreciated like the visual effects aspect of Star Wars, the practical effects. It was something I was always interested in. I too am not an engineer. I've learned that I'm not great in math. I can properly, get the equations once I learn them, but that's just not how my brain thinks. So Star Wars really like expanded my imagination. I actually got into going to the bookstore every time at Barnes and Noble, and I would get Movie Line magazine. I got cinematography magazine, and I would study those and try to see what these visionaries, how did they achieve this, right? Even like when they did this, I still have it, a book on Nightmare Before Christmas, stop motion animation. How do they do that? Oh my gosh, this is mind blowing. So that when I would watch the films, wow, look at what they've accomplished on screen. So for me, it was not just the actual stories. Initially, that's what drew me in, but then it became more about the movie making process, which fueled my desire to become a part of the entertainment industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think, yeah, we've all talked about imaginative play, and I think, the action figures that was definitely a bit of creativity. It wasn't quite the same as you guys are saying, where it's like, oh, it clicked for me that I could do this too. It was more like I was practicing for the thing that I would eventually want to do, which is write and direct and just generally be creative by working through things with my action figures. I've told stories many times about working through understanding relationship stuff of Han was frozen and a cloud car pilot was hitting on Leia, and Leia didn't want to date him, and the cloud car pilot was depressed, and I had to play through all that and play through Luke processing that Ben is gone, and like I worked through a lot of trauma with those action figures. But it was also like a real imperative between my brother and I that we saw other kids would just pick them up and smash them together. And we're like, no, we need a narrative. We need a story. What's happening? Why are they there? Why are they together? Like, all those things. So it is early storytelling practice to just play with the action figures. But I think on an even deeper level, I think for me, escapism is too light of a word. It is more like being willing to dream of beautiful, bizarre, impossible things that could maybe be real. I've also told the story of having seen a beautiful sunset, which I didn't see often, with lots of strange colors, and being like, it's Bespin, and my mom being a little worried of like, it's not real. But the value of it to me was like, you look around the real world and sometimes it's not that exciting depending on the life you live. And these bizarre visions of a swamp planet and a wise frog man and even the scary vision of Vader, just for me, it just instilled this like just deep desire to indulge in fantasy worlds that can be that remind you that life does not have to be dreary. Look at how exciting all this stuff is that all these people dreamed up, and look at how you can just dream up all this stuff. And I think all over the years as I return to Star Wars, that's sometimes this like warm feeling that greets me of like, things don't have to be a certain way. You can just make up wild, beautiful crap. And I think it's to this day while I'm kind of like, I like the weirdos. I like the things that don't quite make sense, because that's what's so fantastic about it, is the break from the parts of day-to-day life that can feel dreary and contained and non-creative.
Well, wild, beautiful crap. That should be a t-shirt.
It's going to be one of our best sellers. One of our best sellers. This is wild, beautiful crap, man. So moving on to kind of our teen years or our adult years, for us, heading really into the special edition and into the prequels, that sort of those Renaissance moments for Star Wars. Jennifer, what did that era provide? What did you get out of Star Wars once you were, an adult?
For like the special edition into the prequels, it certainly offered community. It offered a chance for me to talk to Star Wars with other people, to have like fun disagreements, realizing that everyone has very strong opinions about things and you might hash it out, but it's all in good fun, which is a stark contrast to how it is online, which is why I'm like, again, a lot of these people that say these things online would never say it to your face, or you might get into it with them in person and you'd figure out a way to like come to like, hey, you think that and I think this. That's just how it is when you're face to face with other fans. And that is part of the fun, is hearing other fans' perspectives, and that they're not going to all love Salacious B. Crumb like I obsessively love Salacious B. Crumb, right? That's fun. And I started learning more about things from other fans. I also learned that there's always going to be someone who knows more than me, and that's okay. So yeah, it taught me a lot of wonderful life lessons interacting with other Star Wars fans in real life.
In real life, yeah. Did you run into a lot of Salacious B. Crumb haters?
I mean, people just who didn't appreciate his charm, his sense of humor, his dark sense of humor, which, I greatly appreciate. His relationship, his friendship with Jabba. Like, there's a lot of things to dive into.
That was
I
one
see
of the,
this half joking and kind of not.
Well, this is one of the traumas that I worked through, is because I got that Jabba the Hutt Kenner set that came with the Salacious B. Crumb, who his limbs didn't move at all. He was forever in a little sitting position.
Yeah.
But I loved him, and I can't remember if I thought it or if my brother said, like, he probably died and the sail barge blew up.
Oh yeah.
And I had to invent an entire narrative with that little guy of like how he escaped. Because like, no, this shall not stand.
No, I believe
Salacious lives.
Yeah, he's like a cat.
He lives.
Yeah. Those are great life lessons of just community and fandom, and great stuff. Ken, what did you get out of Star Wars? What did it provide for you as you were becoming a young adult?
It was a shorthand to find the people that would mean things to my life and be important to my journey. And our lives kind of coincided, all three of us, give or take a few months here and there, of that dark time in Star Wars, where it was a thing of the past. But not just Star Wars, but we were encouraged with some intent, I get, of put away the childish things, grow up. I understand where some of that comes from. You don't want to be locked in permanent immaturity, but it was, hey, I'm in seventh grade now. I'm in eighth grade now. I've got to put that Star Wars figure on the shelf and not deal with it because that's not allowed anymore. So in that, the little secret references, the jokes you'd make and someone would connect. One of my lifelong friends, film. He actually teaches film and screenwriting at local LA colleges. My friend Joel Trudgeon. We were in ninth grade. We didn't know each other. He was this lanky Canadian goof, and I was this California beach boy who didn't like the ocean, and I made a reference to Hardware Wars, and he perked up. He said, "Did you just quote Augie Ben Doggy?" He was like, "I did. We've been friends ever since." That was 1992. It was a shorthand, and I'm glad it's changed, and I'm glad that I can go on social media and almost be annoyed at the amount of Instagram reels about people. Look what I got, like Star Wars, and I'm going to do a zany sketch. Sometimes it's almost like it's almost too much, but then I pull back and go, "Man,
Yeah.
I could give a list of names, but."
We'll talk about evolving, right?
We're talking about evolving.
Relationships evolving, yeah.
Yeah, but also it's hard not to be a grump. I am Han Solo at heart. But then I have to go. But I have to remind myself to go back to those times where it was literally, you had to put that on the shelf and talking a little bit later in life. But you talk about the prequels and special editions, actually more than anything. It was like a permission to love it again, which seems weird to say. It was permission to love and not be embarrassed that I have a Star Wars Monopoly set. I had a Princess Leia T-shirt, big white T-shirt with almost like a pencil drawing of her with the blaster from New Hope, and I would wear that as a joke in my stand-up. I would wear it. This is like 2003 or 4. I'd wear it because I know I would be mocked, and it was part of the joke. It was self-loathing humor to go up on stage. I went one night at the Ice House. I went up in that shirt and a lightsaber. And did a joke about being a lonely virgin, and everyone loved laughing at me. That's not the case anymore. It's not the case anymore. So I'm glad that's evolved. But that's what it meant for me during those ages. It was not a secret thing, but it was a way to connect, like you said, Jen, with communities that I wanted to be in.
It was like there was a real, and this is dated, I think, to our era. Maybe not. Other younger people can tell us. But there was we live two lives. The people that we can wink and nod to, the love is genuine. And I bought those action figures because I actually think they're cool. And I can't believe the mold is so great on these Jawas and blah, 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 blah. And then in front of the other people, you make all those jokes about being lonely and nerd, never having sex.
Yes.
All that stuff as a defense mechanism. And that's why I'm like, those jokes still, they're still around. And if people feel they're true and they're true to their experience and want to make them great, I'm not going to tell people not to make that joke. But my hackles go up a little bit because I think it can be a living two lives of I legitimately love this, but I only feel safe if I'm making fun of myself by expressing it.
Yeah, we're talking about something as simple as Star Wars, and that plays out in a lot of other ways in other people's lives, and you can see how destructive that is, and that's where it comes from. And sometimes it aggravates me when it's like we look at pop culture that way. Look at what's going on the last couple of weeks here, last couple of years around this space, right? Oh, we're just talking about Star Wars. We are not. We're talking about more. But it was. And I was someone who loved sports, still loves sports. I spent all day yesterday watching football. I could talk it with those other folks, which was always silly. I think it's completely silly. We're both idolizing completely fictional people. Sports people and Luke Skywalker they're all dreams to us. We're never going to be either of them in real life. But yeah, you had to hide it. You had to hide that flame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're making me think of a couple things about what that era meant to me, being late teen, young adult into truly an adult. How much I was told that it wasn't even a thing I needed to do to leave it in the past, but more that it would happen. My parents probably told me, my brother told me, maybe pop culture told me. I frankly thought it was like puberty, whereas I can't stop that. That's going to happen to my body. And I got to 13, 14. I was like, what day is it going to happen that I hate action figures now? And I remember being just shocked that the day never came. And then the action figures came out, and look around and be like, there are a bunch of other people when the Power of the Force 2 for me started to come out in late 90s and really pick up steam, and look around all of these other people, they also never went through their action figure puberty where they automatically hated them. It was community. It was absolutely community building. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is hope. Star Wars returning with the action figures, the special editions, the prequels, really did connect for me to the themes in Star Wars of hope. And I think this is one of the times where our relationships evolves, because we have a lot of Star Wars, and we're surrounded by people who love Star Wars, and it's profitable to make videos about it and share every action figure you have. It isn't just that Star Wars went away for people of a different age. We've talked about this before. Ken's got great bits about it in his stand-up of, the 80s were a scary time to grow up, where the future was really, really in doubt of, is it going to be nuclear war? Is it going to be the AIDS epidemic? We were talking about the climate change crisis back then. Not enough, but is the ozone layer going to, are we just going to burn alive one day? Even, paranoias that turned out to not be real. Like, are we all just going to die from razors and Halloween candy? There was a lot of like, are we even going to make it to life?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, for me, late 80s, early 90s, almost everything I loved in pop culture ended. Twin Peaks ended. Doctor Who was canceled. Guns N' Roses broke up. Star Wars was gone. Like, almost everything I loved went away. And there was kind of a sense of like, that happens. Things you love die. And for Star Wars to kind of come back in such a big way and not just be nostalgia, but to reinvent itself and introduce itself to a new generation and be different and create these community bonds. For me, it's really important to look back on that and understand how much that instilled a sense of hope that the things we love can always return in a way, in a healthy way that isn't just nostalgia. It's important for me to think about that and share that, because I think we're almost in a different place as we start talking about the modern era, where it's almost the opposite, where people feel like we're too attached to things we love, returning and absolutely never going away. And that for me is like, it's good to think about our relationship can evolve, because I had a real reason to feel that sense of hope about Star Wars coming back. And maybe I interact with Star Wars differently now that it's not going anywhere, most likely. So moving into more of the modern era for us, Jennifer, in the beginning of this sort of Disney Lucasfilm era, Star Wars became a part of our careers in a different way. It's a different community because it's social media. How did you feel about, kind of the first chunk of time here in the Disney Lucasfilm era? How did you interact with Star Wars, or what did it give you in that era that was different?
I think initially, like in 2009, 2010, Star Wars was so much fun, the online community. It was like, reconnecting with long lost friends, people who I'd never met before, all over the world, celebrating Star Wars. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you love this too. Oh my gosh, finding your people, like-minded people. And then to find out that Star Wars was going to come back in the way that it did, it was like, what? And then when Lucasfilm hired me to write for their blog, I was a contributor. That never got old. Seeing that Lucasfilm in the end of the emails, I swear to God. And like when they hired me to do Star Wars Celebration stuff and hosting things, and it just felt like, I'm living my dream. This is what I always, always wanted. And then to learn that the people at Lucasfilm, they're good people. Like all the people that I interacted with are just great, imaginative, creative people. It was like so wonderful. And now, not to get negative, but we are in a different phase. And it's a little, I feel like Star Wars is going to have to recalibrate. And I feel like Star Wars is going to have to, I don't want to say hit the reset button, but something's got to change. And it's not just with Star Wars. I think it's fandoms at large. I think, it's with streaming, it's with all these things. And I think we're just going to have to go hit the reset button, take a break. And I think the Star Wars will always be there, but how we consume it, it's going to change. It has to change, because I think the negativity for me personally has actually prevented me from wanting to celebrate Star Wars online like I did in 2009. Certainly, I'm not going to do it on Twitter. Even on Instagram, it's fun, but I don't know. It doesn't have the same novelty, or like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel, it just feels kind of sad and toxic. And I know I'm not the only one that feels like that, but it's we're going to have to go to therapy for our relationship. Some marriage counseling, Star Wars.
I certainly have lots of positive things to say about the sort of Disney Lucasfilm era and what it gave to me with ForceCenter and learning other people's perspectives and doing the deep dives that we did on ForceCenter have made me appreciate some of the life lessons in Star Wars even more. And I've had moments that they have truly helped me, not like generally, but like, specifically Wednesday, May 6th, 2018, I made a better choice because earlier today we talked about X, like not small things at all. So in some ways, my relationship with Star Wars has like just really, really deepened in a really beautiful way. But I've also felt some of there's beautiful things about the community of it in the social media, but then how do you wrestle with some of the dark things? So I'll get back to my dark things, but Ken, I want to hear your positive journey and heading into the dark side of your journey in this Disney Lucasfilm era.
Yeah, I loved it. And there was that weird period of time like where Clone Wars was on the air. The prequels were behind us, but some of the video games are out there. You mentioned that the original Battlefront 2, how I loved that. Clone Wars was running, and those that knew, right? We got some stuff there. And I know, Joseph, you shared that you weren't, after the movie, you kind of weren't with it. That came a few years later, and that's a fascinating, just era of Star Wars. But when digital media started to explode and became a place to, get on for better or worse and share your opinions, and Star Wars comes back in 2012, it was a world of possibilities. I also felt like finally my lifetime of loving this stuff finally has a place to go professionally, which was good. The jokes started to change on stage. You could find a way to get the jokes out there a little differently and share the love. I changed. I was definitely snarky about it. My love of Star Wars has always been there, but my understanding of it has changed. Without going into details, you and I have shared many times here, Joseph, over the years, of specific conversations that changed my mind politically, socially, how I just approach the day, how I find empathy. All those things have directly come from conversations about Star Wars. I even struggled the last couple of weeks trying to explain to two comic friends of mine of what we do at ForceCenter. I sometimes can't explain it. We're not just a review show. We're not here to... And then I always go to that example of Dexter Jetster and doing 2 hours on that moment, because that's the only thing I can explain no, it's finding great meaning in these things and finding how we attach to it and find how we can take that into our lives. And I sometimes just feel sorry for those that stop on the surface and can't have it affect their life in a more detailed and realistic way. But our ForceCenter listeners are affected that way. That's why we do it. And that's what kind of all, again, much like I didn't know coming out of the theater in '83 what that all meant. I just felt something. In 2012, it was kind of this not that we're just Chewie, we're home, but which I know came 2 years later, but or 2.5 years later, but you know what I mean? We get to do this again and do it in a more robust and meaningful way. That's what it meant in that era. Yeah,
no, in a big sense, once again, of the impossible can happen with the big three coming back and all of that. Jennifer talked a little bit about what in the moment we're getting into now, what has been challenging about your relationship with Star Wars. We're going to end on the positive, so I want to let us be honest and examine. And it doesn't even. I don't think talking about the dark side needs to be negative, because again, the whole reason I wanted to have this conversation is I think sometimes we can we hold ourselves or let others hold ourselves to. You need to enjoy a thing this way. And I think for me, it's fine if your relationship evolves. And sometimes it's escapism. Sometimes it's great depth. Sometimes it's community. Sometimes it's just comfort. The things that we can get out of Star Wars can evolve and change. We don't always have to get all of them or the exact same thing we got 5 years ago or 2 days ago. So with that in mind, Ken, where are you at with some of the how Star Wars is adjusting into your life these days?
It's at a different spot, and I have to allow for the evolution to happen. And part of it is just being in the game so long. And God, you mentioned some couple weeks ago, Joseph, about maybe it's time to get rid of some of your Star Wars novels, not because you don't love them, but because you're never going to read them again, and that's a lot of shelf space. I've had that moment too. I'm trying to sell my Black Series figures and this and that. That's a different kind of game than just I'm not there anymore where I have the time to read every book, and it's not what we do here on the show as much anymore. And ForceCenter's become my place to crawl into this bubble and talk about how much I love it. And I'm struggling. I have to allow myself to evolve. Post the strikes last summer, Me not taking to Ahsoka like others did, I was in a weird headspace of like, am I going through some kind of change with this again? And I was, and it's okay to admit it. I don't have a lot of Star Wars shirts anymore. I don't want to engage publicly. I don't want to have that conversation that, oh, you like Star Wars, huh? And there's a beat, and you don't know which way the next 5 minutes is going to go. That's worn on me, and in a weird way, I'm back to where I started, where like I don't talk about Star Wars unless it's shorthand, and it's gone back to that. But that's my decision. It doesn't have to be that way, and that's why, as much as I was making some little jokes earlier about like I love going on and seeing just pockets of positivity, and that word positivity is so weaponized now. But you know what I mean? Of just people like, yeah, I like this stuff. I like Jar Jar Binks. Here's my figure collection of Jar Jar. Like, I do love that stuff, and if I want to engage with it, I can, and I don't have to be held up to my own standards from 2016, where every second of every conversation, I've leveled out a little bit. I got back into sports. I'm a big sports guy, and I pulled away from a lot of it, and now I'm back into it. And there's reasons not to be involved in it. Trust me, it's not a perfect world. But the love of competition, the love of watching games, the love of my Miami Dolphins, it's like I've allowed that to return. Where and now I can even it out, where I can watch the Dolphins on Sunday morning while also thinking about Star Wars. I can do both, and it's been good for me to kind of level out the playing field the last couple years.
Yeah, no, I think that's all well said. And like the Star Wars novels for me, like decreasing some of those is about balance, because I think I don't know, I feel like there was a kid in a candy store era with Star Wars for me.
Yes,
there had been. Even all the ups and downs over the years, like this has now gone beyond. I've found the friends who are safe. It's gone beyond like now I can do Star Wars sketches as long as I kind of make fun of myself for making them. By the time the Disney era is really roaring and ForceCenter is going well, it's like, oh wow, complete and total engagement. We were lucky to be getting a lot of the Star Wars books because we were doing reviews and like. And I wanted every book because I was like a kid in a candy store who had been deprived of candy. It's like, I want them all. I need them all. And now I'm to the point of like, I need about half of them, because about half of them I really love and I'm really going to revisit and have fond memories of. And others I like, but if I ever want to read them again, I'll check them out in the library. And I don't feel the need to own them all, because I think it was coming out of a little bit of almost that. You didn't have this as a kid, so you kind of overcorrect as an adult. And I think that it goes for like social media too. I think I've never posted anything about Star Wars that was not genuine on social media, but there were times where I'm like, I got other things to do today, but everybody's making a joke about X and I don't want to be left out, so I should make a joke about X too. Again, I want to be really clear. Like, if anybody calls me a fake fan, I'm going to bury them in Star Wars action figures. I've never said anything that isn't genuine, but I also didn't like that feeling of I had that fear when I was young. Oh no, people will find out I know too much about Star Wars. Transitioning to the fear. Oh no, people will find out I don't know enough about Star Wars. And I didn't want to trade one fear for another. So I feel like I have had a balancing out too, and said, it's okay for me to just enjoy Star Wars exactly the way I want to, not putting any external pressures on it. And, anybody who's going to be judgmental of that is not the kind of fandom friend that I want.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, they could pull up the stakes tomorrow. Disney could say this is not profitable, sell Lucasfilm to Apple, Star Wars goes away, nothing new comes out from this day forward. ForceCenter would still exist because we'd have hours of conversations about what the original trilogy meant to us, the prequels meant to us. The love is deep, and just being able to sit with that and knowing that that's fine. This is where we're at. We're here forever, as long as we want to be, I should say, as a podcast. But you know what I mean? Like I don't need to go online and prove it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say how grateful I am to both of you. This has been it's been fun, but it's also been therapeutic for me, because I grew up not only not wanting to talk about Star Wars because I was embarrassed, or I was worried that I wouldn't say the right thing, I'd mess up. And you guys have always been so warm and encouraging and supportive, where not only It's okay if I don't know the species, or I, don't remember the year that something was made. It's okay. That's not why we're here, right? To dot all the I's and whatever they say. So this has been like exposure therapy for me, to also practice like sharing my opinion, because I know that this is a safe space for me and for our listeners. Like, it's okay if we don't all agree. That's part of being a fan, as I said. And what I also really appreciate about both of you, we have had some really deep, sophisticated Star Wars discussions. And that's why when people are like, "Wait, you do a Star Wars podcast?" I'm like, you have no idea. You have no idea how deep we go here. And yes, we may talk about Kiadi-Mundi and whatever, but we're also talking about the major themes and the life lessons. That's what is so great about ForceCenter, is being able to play on all these different levels. I'm just so grateful that you guys have included me. And even when I've taken time away, you're like, "Nah, the door's always open. Come on back." I'm just so thankful. My life has changed in such a positive way. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You're welcome, but that's not even needed, because we thank you. And yeah, absolutely. What are you talking about? Landa brought the credibility in the early days. We were just two comedians. This is she wrote for Lucasfilm. She did the viral Jar Jar video. We need Landa. Get us Landa.
Get us Landa on the phone. See?
Well, that is beautiful, Ken. Moving towards wrapping up here.
Yeah.
What in this modern time? What are you, as your relationship with Star Wars has evolved and changed a little bit? What are you getting from it now? What's it providing you, or how is it fitting into your life in this newest evolution?
It's still more of a moral compass than any other time in my life, and that includes when the compass maybe goes, I want to go north, and it's like, what have you tried northeast? The Acolyte was very much about that, where I always say I love discussing it, even maybe more than watching it, which only meant like I've got to think about how I look, and not just like the Jedi, the dark side, light side, but all right, let me. This is a story from such a different perspective and journey than mine. It's still Star Wars, and I got to find my way through with it, because I am having sometimes my defenses come up on things, and it's rewarding to work through that, and you should apply it to real life, but sometimes I think it's still Star Wars, and not the one-to-one comparisons can be a little I don't know, a little much. But it definitely should lead you to those conversations. And so that's what it's been the last couple of years. I still have all the joys. I still have those little moments, Chimere floating in with a Sith robe and a mat, like, that's cool. Like, I'm still here for that. It's all very much there. But in these times from, 2015, 2008 on, it's where I think where a lot of things changed for me, and these murky waters that we're all kind of sloshing through. Star Wars continues to be a moral compass for me.
I think that's great, and I think that's definitely true for me. And I think you're really right to point out, like, it's not always the one-to-one. It's not like, and then I learned from Star Wars to maybe be open to killing my dad, but then forgiving him. Like, I don't mean it literally. I mean it. The emotional ideas, and even in the Acolyte, which is heartbreaking to me in many parts. Not because like I think the writing is bad, but because I think I like all of the characters, and I understand where all of the characters are coming from, and they all go through pain and tragedy, and watching a Star Wars that is a little bit more realistic really helps me think about and accept, like, well, you're gonna make some mistakes, and watch out for why you're making the choices you're making, and those kind of big life lessons that are not one-to-one to laser swords and life and death consequences, for sure. I think Star Wars has fit in my life in different ways, in a really nice way. I think Star Wars has always, from when I was 4 to 22 to now 50, has always been a friend in turbulent times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that where it's just escapism and it doesn't mean anything, but just seeing an action figure, it's a little burst of joy, a little burst of happiness and connection to this memory of the day I picked it up, and what that character means, that funny conversation, that meme, whatever it is. And I'm not getting rid of any of my action figures. They're my rotating art display and I'm due to rotate my display right over there. Did some new figures. So I like that it can just, it doesn't need to be everything. It can just be a thing that's like, I check on action figures every day. I look at action figures every day. That's one of the ways it's in my life. Particularly like when someone like more obscure history from the making of comes up. I'm like, that's sometimes when I'm the most excited these days. Like getting to see the Dijkstraflex camera at the Academy Museum, and like some of those like the history of making it. Phil Sostak or Pablo Hidalgo post will get shared about some weird little detail, or we had a really fun conversation about Max Rebo's limbs, and like some of that sort of ephemera of Star Wars gets me really excited. And I do not dislike new Star Wars, but I think I've realized that I need to have a different relationship with it, and that's okay. It's going to be rare that a new episode of Star Wars or a new film of Star Wars is going to come out and I'm going to have the same relationship to it that I have with Empire Strikes Back or Attack of the Clones, because a part of that relationship is letting it sink in and letting it become, letting it age like a wine or a whiskey, because it isn't just the thing I watched. Did I enjoy it? Was it good or bad? Was it well written? Do other people like it? Did it make money? All those things we talk about in the moment don't end up being the true value over time. The lessons sink deeper. The moments that you're not even really thinking about watching the show, but a scene comes to your mind and you realize, I really love that and I really want to re-experience that. It becomes this this Jedi holocron for the time it came out in the world and in your life. I will never watch The Acolyte without remembering watching the final episode in a hotel room in Bergen, Norway, because I was on a trip with my family. That's always going to be a part of The Acolyte for me, and it will only become richer over time. So the part of my relationship with the new stuff is there's so much noise around it. When I'm watching it, I'm thinking about discussing it on the podcast, and it doesn't feel the same as classic Star Wars because I'm processing it in a different way. And for me, I just want to be okay with that and say it's going to feel different over time, react to it in the moment, but also just let it age.
I know we need Jen's answer here, but you're making me think of some of the other things that where I'm at right now, and I do the Max Rebo arms versus legs conversation was one of my favorites because it was just so wonderfully silly and passionate, and we got a lot of comments on it. I'm here for that stuff. I'm here for the jokes, but it got to the point too, and you you never want to be so serious that you're the bummer at the party, but our friend of the show, Adam Witt from the Movie Guys, he and I've had he's said so many things I love over the years off air, and one time he was just like, I stopped talking Star Wars with people until I met you, Ken. We were at a Schmodown event. He's like, I tell you about you because whenever someone wanted to come talk Star Wars to me, you didn't want to talk Star Wars. You wanted to talk about the weather. You didn't want to get deep with me. You didn't want to roll around with it like it's been in my life. And that's kind of where I'm at. Where even something like you throw in like Indiana Jones stuff too, where so many. I don't want to have a conversation with why you think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull sucks. I get a lot of the reasons why. I get Spielberg being bored. I can have those conversations too. Or do you want to talk about a story that's about redefining who you thought you were, not just for Indiana Jones, but America in the 1950s? That's more valuable to me. I'm more interested in that. Other than that, go have your sports talk radio on all this stuff. That doesn't mean as much. You want to make fun of Han Solo getting his name in Solo. Yeah, it's not my favorite scene too, other than the fact that it's everything about that character in one shot. It is a character taking on what he thinks this persona that he needs to be for the next 40 years of his life, and it only changes at the end when he dies, when he makes a decision against the image of Han Solo and goes and be who he needs to be. You want to talk about that in that scene? Then we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, let's talk about weather. That's all I can get into.
Drod Munbrin's line, "Who are your people?" is one of the best lines in Star Wars, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, thought I'd throw that out there. Jennifer, what is your current relationship? How are you fitting Star Wars into your life in a positive way, and how is it affecting you positively these days?
I go back to the 80s and early 90s when Star Wars was kind of a thing of the past. It was a thing of the past. And I felt like I had to, it became a huge part of my identity. And I felt like I had a personal stake in the stories and in Lucasfilm. And I really wanted to like spread the good word of Star Wars. And that really carried on up until the Disney era, the earlier part of the Disney era, where I felt like I had to defend it. I had to spread the joy. I had to be active active. Otherwise, it would go away like how it once did. And then I don't know, recently was realizing geek culture, nerd culture is mainstream culture now. Like those of us who were ostracized for all these, things that we used to love, that's like now the mainstream. And so it's not as shocking to say that you're a Star Wars fan, because a lot of people are Star Wars fans. Obviously the way that we talk about it is a little bit different. I'm not going to have these conversations with my sister. It's just like, what? But I no longer have this like feeling like I have to help my beloved Star Wars be successful. I don't have to share every single thought, make tons of videos in defense of blah, blah, blah. I only need to do it when I truly feel compelled to do it. And right now, I am preserving my time and energy because it just doesn't seem worth it to me. And I think maybe there will come a point when some of these bad faith actors will either not make money, the culture will change, and things are going to be very different. I think, I hope, I believe, I have hope in that. So, but right now, I don't know. I'm just more interested in looking at miniatures and figuring out how I'm going to customize my Blythe doll. That's what's exciting me. Star Wars will always be there, and that's the great thing. It's not going anywhere. It's not, because my fandom lives on, right? We can always put on the movies whenever we want.
Jen, that's a powerful ending. We should have just ended the show, right? Roll credits on that. So sorry I'm stepping on it, but that's kind of where I've had to get back to, because it did disappear at one point, right? And all the things we've talked about. And that's maybe specific to our generation. Like you said, Joseph, I'd love to hear from other people coming up. Is there a 12-year-old right now going, someone told me to put away my nerd things? Probably is. But Star Wars did go away. It did go away. And so I think I operated with a lot of fear over the last, in the first 5-6 years of us doing this. Now, 10 years in, 11 years in, that's where I've learned. It ain't going away. I'm not going to let it go away, whether I wear a T-shirt or not, whether I have 5 T-shirts or not. It's going to be here, and that's a different kind of calm. I don't know. It's like being a swinging single, and suddenly you settle down. There's a power in that trope of that energy of am I going to be loved is gone. Now I know I am. And you can find love in a lot of different ways, by the way. It doesn't have to be inside of a arrangement of a couple there, of course. But you know what I mean? There's that too as well. There's that. I have that in stand-up. Do I belong on stage? Now I know I do. And I think that's where I'm at with Star Wars. It's going to be there, and I love that it's there.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. And I think that's a good way to wrap it up, except for we should do a plug. Hey, we're doing a live stream at the end of the week, right?
Is that this week? Yes, it is.
I think it is this week. Yeah,
it is.
Welcome to live ForceCenter calendar. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is not just to plug it, but just to say, I know we've been talking a lot about some of the ups and downs of Star Wars discourse, and I know other people feel that, and I always want to celebrate the people who watch and listen who are a positive version of that discourse. And Jennifer, it sounds like you've been having an amazing time in the Discord, and I love doing the live streams where we can see everybody's opinions in real time and respond to them, and like talk about continuing the playground, like from the playground to hanging out in bars in my 20s, wondering if Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be like Han Solo in the prequels, and all the way through to sitting in these live streams and having these chats with so many passionate people who truly love Star Wars and love it in their own way. That is a huge and positive way that Star Wars remains in my life, is the live chats, the live streams with the chats in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so Friday, 2 p.m. local. I'll get that link up. You just reminded me that we are already 2 weeks into September.
Painful. Anyway, we're running out of time, so we better wrap up. Ken, do you want to take us home?
We are on social media at ForceCenter Pod. Like Joseph said, I think we're going to be. I don't think we have a Blue Sky yet. We're going to get over there. We're on Threads as well over there. We are also on Instagram. Our Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. Subscribe here on YouTube if you want. Merch available at 2 spots right now, tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. That might be transitioning away, so go ahead and get things over there. Or we might just keep it up, because who knows? We want to make 50 cents on a shirt every now and then. But we also have a Fourth Wall shop that is linked down below, and we're going to be adding things and maybe even some old designs showing up there. You can support us directly on Patreon at patreon.com/ForceCenter, and follow me at Ken Napzok, or go to my website, kennapzok.com. I do have a show this Friday at Flappers as well, so that's a late night show if you're local. Come on out. Jen, where can they find you?
You can find me on most of the social media sites at Jennifer Landa, or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
And
Excellent.
Joseph, take us home. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Some mentions just popped up. So sorry, I got scared.
Oh,
I got
understand.
scared. I got scared.
I understand. I sent a lot of emails this morning, and I'm working hard to keep my eyes on the screen.
We'll talk about We'll talk about it after.
We'll talk about it. All right. Hey, everybody. We have things to talk about. So here's where you can find me on social media, where I will still post about my action figures. I got a box from Entertainment Earth, and I think Jedi Master Soul is in there, and I'm waiting to have a really good day and open it up. Maybe the first day that's under 100 degrees, I'll celebrate by opening Jedi Master Soul and put them on the old social media. You can find me pretty much everywhere. My account is still on X, but I'm not really using it right now. But everywhere else, at Joseph Scrimshaw. You can visit my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for all sorts of news about different film things. In particular, the horror feature film that I'm producing right now. I have a partnership with a great organization in the Twin Cities in Minnesota called Film North that does fiscal sponsorships of films to help raise money. So if you would like to contribute to that feature film, that is up. All the information in a link on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. That is it. This has been ForceCenter. Now we're going to go check our messages.